My sister changed mom's caregiver, then her money vanished. I used to think the worst thing my sister ever did was change mom's caregiver without telling me. I was wrong. That was just the part she wanted me to notice. Mom had been living in the same small brick house for 38 years. My father died there. My sister and I learned to ride bikes in that driveway. Every Christmas, Mom still taped the same faded angel to the front window because she said it made the house feel watched over. By the time she turned 79, she needed help. Not full-time nursing care, not yet. Just someone to come in during the day, make sure she took her medicine, help with meals, drive her to appointments, and keep her company while I was at work. I found a caregiver named Patricia through an agency. Mom liked her immediately. She doesn't talk to me like I'm made of glass, Mom told me after Patricia's first week. That mattered. Mom hated being fussed over. She hated anyone calling her sweetie. She hated when people raised their voices like age had made her deaf instead of just tired. Patricia was calm, practical, and kind. For nearly 8 months, everything worked. Then my sister, Renee, came back into the picture. Renee had always been the daughter who arrived dramatically and left before the cleanup. She lived 2 towns over, close enough to visit, far enough to have excuses. She showed up with flowers, took photos with Mom, posted them online, and disappeared for weeks. I handled the medication refills. I handled the bills. I handled the doctor calls. Renee handled being praised by relatives for making time. One Friday afternoon, Patricia called me while I was leaving work. Her voice was tight. "I'm sorry, Nina," she said. "I didn't want to bother you, but I just got a call from the agency. They said your mother's care has been terminated." I stopped beside my car. "What do you mean terminated?" "They said a family member requested a different arrangement." My stomach went cold. "What family member?" There was a pause. "Your sister." I called Renee before I even got into the car. She answered cheerfully, like nothing was wrong. "Why did you fire Patricia?" I asked. "She wasn't fired," Renee said. "Don't be dramatic. Mom loved Patricia. Mom needs someone more attentive. More attentive than the person who's been with her every weekday for 8 months." Renee sighed. "This is exactly why I didn't tell you first. You make everything a fight." I drove straight to Mom's house. A woman I had never seen before opened the door. She was probably in her late 50s, with short dark hair and a soft voice. She smiled like she had been expecting me. "You must be Nina," she said. I looked past her into the hall. "Where's my mother?" "In the living room. I'm Vivian." I didn't shake her hand. Mom was in her recliner with a blanket across her lap. She looked smaller than she had 3 days earlier. Not sick exactly, just dimmed. "Mom," I said, kneeling beside her, "did you know Patricia wasn't coming back?" She blinked at me. Renee said Patricia wanted fewer hours. That was the first lie. I knew it immediately. Patricia had cried on the phone. I looked at Vivian. She gave me a careful smile. "Transitions can be hard," she said. I hated that word. Transitions. As if someone hadn't just removed a trusted person from my mother's life, without warning. That night, I called Renee again. "She lied to Mom," I said. "Who?" "Vivian, or you. Someone told Mom Patricia chose to leave." Renee's voice sharpened. "Mom doesn't need to be upset with details." "Details? She's not a child." "No, she's an elderly woman who gets confused and anxious. She gets confused when people lie to her." Renee went quiet. Then she said, "I'm trying to help. You don't get to control everything just because you live closer." That stung, because it was close enough to truth to sound reasonable. I did live closer. I did make most decisions. But I made them because someone had to. The first week with Vivian, Mom stopped answering my calls. Not completely. Just enough for me to notice. I would call after dinner, and the phone would ring 6 or 7 times before going to voicemail. When Mom finally called back, Vivian was often nearby. "She's tired," Vivian would say in the background. Or, "Tell her about your headache." Or, "Keep it short tonight." The second week, Mom missed her hair appointment. The third week, Renee told me not to come by without calling first. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Vivian says surprise visits confuse Mom's routine, Renee said. Mom's routine includes me. Not every day. I don't come every day. You come whenever you want, it makes things unstable. Unstable. Another word that sounded professional enough to hide cruelty. Then the money started vanishing. I noticed because I paid Mom's bills online every month. Her pension came in on the 1st. Social Security came in on the 3rd. The mortgage had been paid off years ago, so her expenses were predictable. Utilities. Insurance. Groceries. Medication. Caregiver payments. There was usually enough left that Mom could put a little into savings. That month, her checking account was almost empty by the 20th. At first, I thought I had missed something. Then I saw the withdrawals. $400, $600, $750. All cash. All from ATMs near Mom's house. Mom never used ATMs. She still called the debit card the bank card and kept it tucked behind her library card. I printed the statement and drove over. Vivian opened the door again. This time, she didn't smile as warmly. Your mother is resting. I need to see her. She had a rough morning. I'm still going to see her. Mom was at the kitchen table with a cup of tea she hadn't touched. I sat across from her and placed the statement between us. Mom, did you take out cash this month? Her face tightened. What cash? These withdrawals. She looked at the paper, then toward the hall. That tiny glance told me everything and nothing at the same time. Renee said it was for household things, Mom whispered. What household things? I don't know. Vivian needed money for errands. How much money? Mom's eyes filled. I don't want trouble. The sentence broke my heart more than the withdrawals. My mother, who once marched into my elementary school because a teacher called me lazy, was now afraid to ask where her own money went. I called Renee from Mom's driveway. Why is Vivian taking cash from Mom's account? She isn't taking it, Renee said. Mom gives it to her. For what? Groceries, supplies, gas, things you don't think about. I buy Mom's groceries every Sunday. Not everything is about you. There's over $2,000 missing. It's not missing, it's spent. On what? Renee snapped. Maybe if you weren't so suspicious, people would actually tell you things. That was when I realized she wasn't surprised. She already knew. I went to the bank the next morning with Mom's power of attorney folder. The manager, a patient woman named Sonia, reviewed the account with me. I can't tell you who used the card unless we file a fraud claim, she said. Then file one. She hesitated. Your mother would need to confirm she didn't authorize the withdrawals. She didn't. Has she said that clearly? I thought of Mom looking toward the hall. No, I admitted, not clearly. Sonia lowered her voice. Then you need to get clarity before this gets worse. Worse came 3 days later. A check cleared for $5,000. The memo line said home safety improvements. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. No one had installed anything at Mom's house. No ramp. No railings. No bathroom bars. Nothing. The check was made out to Renee. My hands started shaking. When I confronted her, Renee didn't deny it. That was reimbursement, she said. For what? For expenses. What expenses? Do you know how much time I've spent dealing with Mom's care? I almost laughed. You changed her caregiver behind my back and collected $5,000. I'm allowed to be compensated. By stealing from Mom. She agreed. Put her on the phones. She's sleeping. It's 2 in the afternoon. She had a hard day because you keep upsetting everyone. Then she hung up. That night, I drove to Mom's house and used my key. The chain lock stopped the door after 3 inches. For a second, I just stood there, staring at the thin brass chain. Mom had never used that lock in her life. I knocked. Vivian appeared in the gap. Her face changed when she saw me. Now isn't a good time. Open the door. Your mother doesn't want visitors. I'm not a visitor. From somewhere behind her, Mom called, "Who is it?" "It's me," I shouted. "It's Nina." There was silence. Then Mom said something I barely heard. Vivian closed the door. The chain slid free. When I stepped inside, Mom was standing in the hallway in her robe, gripping her walker. Her face was pale. "I didn't know you were coming," she said. "I know." Vivian hovered behind her. I looked at Mom. "Do you want me here?" Mom's lips trembled. Before she could answer, Vivian said, "She's overwhelmed." I turned to her. I asked my mother. Mom lowered her eyes. "I think maybe tomorrow would be better." It felt like being slapped. Not because she wanted me gone. Because she was too afraid to say she didn't. I left. But I didn't go home. I sat in my car across the street and watched the house where I had grown up. At 8:42, Renee arrived. She didn't knock. Vivian let her in. Renee carried a folder under one arm. That folder bothered me so much I barely slept. The next morning, I called Mom's doctor and asked if there had been any changes in her mental status. The nurse paused. "Your sister requested a letter last week." "What kind of letter?" "A capacity letter." My chest tightened. "Capacity for what?" "I can't discuss details without your mother's consent. I'm her power of attorney. There's a newer document on file." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "What newer document?" "I'm sorry," she said. "You'll need to speak with your mother." That was the midpoint, where everything I thought I understood shifted. This was not just Vivian taking cash. This was not just Renee reimbursing herself. My sister was trying to replace me. I drove to the county records office first. Nothing had changed with the house. Then I drove to the bank. Sonia's expression changed as soon as she pulled up Mom's profile. "Your access was removed yesterday," she said softly. "Removed by who?" "Your mother signed updated authorization." My mother didn't even understand the ATM withdrawals. Sonia turned the monitor slightly away. "I'm limited in what I can say now." "Is Renee on the account?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I sat there with my purse in my lap and felt something inside me harden. Not anger. Not yet. Clarity. Renee had not changed Mom's caregiver because Patricia was inattentive. She changed the caregiver because Patricia would have noticed. Patricia knew Mom's habits. She knew Mom didn't use ATMs. She knew I handled the bills. She knew Renee barely visited unless there was an audience. Vivian didn't know any of that. Or maybe she knew exactly what she had been hired to ignore. I called the agency that employed Patricia and asked whether Vivian worked for them. She didn't. Renee had hired her privately. That answered one question and opened a worse one. How had Renee found a caregiver willing to isolate an elderly woman while money disappeared? I got the answer from Patricia. She called me back that evening. "I've been worried," she said. "I probably shouldn't say this, but your sister asked me something strange before I was removed." "What?" "She asked if I would be comfortable limiting your visits." My throat tightened. "When?" "About 2 weeks before she ended care." "What did you say?" I said no. I said family access was not something I managed unless there was a safety issue. "And then she fired you." "Yes." I closed my eyes. "Did she mention Vivian?" Patricia paused. "She said she had someone more flexible." More flexible. That was the word. Not more qualified. Not more experienced. Flexible. The next day, I went to Mom's house with a plan. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't bring statements. I brought soup. Vivian let me in because Renee wasn't there, and because I smiled like I had finally learned my place. Mom was in the sunroom. She looked relieved to see me, then immediately guilty for looking relieved. I sat beside her and opened the container. "Tomato basil," I said, "the one you like." Her eyes filled. "I thought you were mad at me." "Never." "Renee said you were angry because I changed the papers." What papers, Mom? Her hand tightened around her napkin. She said it was temporary. What was temporary? The bank, the house, I don't know. I kept my voice calm. Did you want to remove me? Tears slipped down her cheeks. She said you were tired of handling everything. I felt the room tilt. She said I was tired. Mom nodded. She said you complained I was becoming a burden. She said she was helping you. That was the wound. Not the money. Not the paperwork. That. Renee had taken my greatest fear, that Mom would feel like a burden, and used it as a weapon. I reached for Mom's hand. I never said that. Mom covered her mouth. Vivian appeared in the doorway. Your mother needs rest. I looked at her. No, my mother needs the truth. Vivian's expression hardened for the first time. I think you should leave. Mom whispered, please don't fight. So I didn't. I squeezed her hand once, stood and walked out. But before I left, I did one thing. I set my phone on record and placed it in the outer pocket of my purse. Then I paused by the hallway table and pretended to search for my keys. Vivian was already speaking in the sunroom. You see what she does to you, she said. This is why Renee worries. Mom said something too soft to hear. Vivian's voice dropped. If you undo those papers, Renee will be very upset, and then who will take care of you? That recording did not prove theft. But it proved pressure. It proved fear. And it gave me enough to call Adult Protective Services. Making that call felt like betraying my family. Then I remembered my mother whispering, I don't want trouble, in her own kitchen. Trouble had already moved in. APS assigned an investigator named Mr. Alvarez. He told me not to confront Renee again. I almost laughed. Confronting Renee was the only thing I wanted to do. Instead, I gathered everything. Bank statements from before my access was removed. Copies of the old power of attorney. Emails with Patricia. The agency termination notice. Screenshots of missed calls. The recording. Then I called Sonia at the bank and said the words she had been waiting for. I believe my mother is being financially exploited. This time, the bank acted. They froze certain transactions pending review. Renee called me within an hour. She didn't say hello. What did you do? I stood in my kitchen, looking at the same ceramic rooster Mom had given me when I moved into my first apartment. I protected Mom. You humiliated her. No, you used her. You have no idea what I've sacrificed. There it is. What? The part where you explain why stealing was actually love. She went quiet. Then her voice changed. You think you're the good daughter because you pay bills and bring groceries, but I'm the one who saw the bigger picture. What bigger picture? The house. There it was. The deepest word in our family. The house. Mom's house had become valuable. The neighborhood changed. Old brick ranch homes were being bought, gutted, and sold for prices none of us would have imagined 20 years ago. I had never thought of Mom's house as money. Renee had. What did you do? I asked. She was going to lose it eventually, Renee said. To who? To taxes, repairs, care costs, life, don't act naive. Mom's bills were paid. For now. I gripped the counter. So you decided to take control. I decided to keep the house and the family. You mean keep it for yourself? She agreed. Because you told her I was tired of her. Renee said nothing. That silence was her first honest answer. The final reveal came 2 weeks later in a conference room at Mom's bank. APS had arranged for Mom to meet without Renee or Vivian present. Sonia was there. Mr. Alvarez was there. So was an attorney who specialized in elder issues. Mom looked terrified when she came in. Then she saw me and started crying. I didn't know what to do, she said. I moved toward her, but the attorney gently raised a hand. Let her speak. So I sat down. And Mom told us. Renee had started months earlier. Not with money. With guilt. She told Mom I was exhausted. Then she told Mom I resented her. Then she told Mom Patricia was reporting private family matters to me. Then she said the house needed to be protected before outsiders got involved. What outsiders? The attorney asked. Mom looked at me. She said if Nina got frustrated, she might put me somewhere and sell the house. I couldn't breathe. Mom continued. She said the only way to make sure that didn't happen was to sign things over temporarily, just until everything settled. What things? The attorney asked. Mom's voice shook. The bank account, the caregiver forms, and a paper about the house after I die. A beneficiary deed. That was the folder Renee carried. That was why she needed a capacity letter. That was why Patricia had to go. The cash withdrawals were never the main goal. They were a test. Could Renee get Mom to hand over money? Could she make me look unstable when I objected? Could she isolate Mom enough to sign the bigger documents? The house had been the target all along. And Vivian had been the tool. When the attorney asked Mom if she understood what she had signed, Mom said no. When he asked if she had felt pressured, she looked down and whispered yes. That whisper changed everything. The bank kept the freeze in place. The attorney helped revoke the new authorizations. APS documented undue influence. The beneficiary paperwork was challenged before it could do permanent damage. Vivian disappeared the same week the investigation began. Renee claimed she had only been trying to prevent conflict. Then she claimed Mom misunderstood. Then she claimed I manipulated everyone. By the time she hired her own lawyer, the pattern was too clear. The cash withdrawals. The $5,000 check. The caregiver switch. The blocked visits. The false statements. The pressure. No single piece looked dramatic on its own. Together, they told the truth. Renee had not snapped. She had planned. The consequences did not arrive like a lightning strike. They came slowly, which somehow felt more satisfying. Renee was removed from every account. She was ordered to repay the money she had taken. The investigation led to charges connected to financial exploitation and fraud. The family relatives who had praised her online went very quiet. Mom never returned to the version of herself she had been before. That was the part no one likes to talk about. Even after the papers were fixed, even after Vivian was gone, even after Renee stopped calling, Mom still apologized when she needed help. She still asked, "Are you sure this isn't too much?" Every time, I answered the same way. "You are not too much." At first, she didn't believe me. So I proved it in boring ways. I brought groceries. I sat through doctor visits. I labeled medication bottles. I replaced the chain lock. I rehired Patricia. The first day Patricia came back, Mom cried so hard Patricia cried too. "I thought you left me," Mom said. Patricia took her hands. "No, ma'am, I was pushed out." Mom looked at me then. Not confused. Not afraid. Just heartbroken. "I let her do it," she whispered. "No," I said. "She learned where you were tender and she pressed there." Months later, Mom asked me to drive her past Renee's house. I didn't ask why. We sat across the street in silence. Renee's curtains were closed. Mom stared at the house for a long time. Then she said, "I keep trying to understand how my own daughter could do that." I didn't have a clean answer. Greed was part of it. Jealousy too. Resentment. But the truth was uglier than any one word. Renee wanted the reward of being the devoted daughter, without the burden of devotion. She wanted control without responsibility. She wanted Mom's house, Mom's money, and Mom's trust. And when she couldn't earn them, she tried to take them. Mom finally turned away from the window. "Take me home," she said. So I did. Not to a perfect home. Not to a home untouched by betrayal. But to her home. The brick house with the faded angel in the window. The house my sister tried to steal one signature at a time. The house where Mom learned the hardest truth of her life. Sometimes the person who says they're protecting you is only protecting the plan they made behind your back. And sometimes justice begins with one daughter refusing to stay outside a chain door.